Welcome to Developmentally Appropriate Practices, Nurturing Children's Growth and Development with the ELOF as your guide. We'll spend the next hour discussing what the ELOF is, how it relates to developmentally appropriate practice, Head Start performance standards, goals, and our program policies and procedures. You should have a copy of the ELOF to refer to as we move through this training, as well as an exit slip. Go ahead and pull out your exit slip and look over it. Our plan is to provide you with the information you need to answer these questions and then feel comfortable using the ELOF to support your work as you plan your classroom environment, lesson plan, and teaching practices. It will even help you to identify professional development goals. So what is the ELOF? It is an acronym for the Early Learning Outcomes Framework, which was created by Head Start to show the continuum of learning for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. It is research-based and comprehensive, covering 60 goals from 7 different domains. It is relevant for children of diverse backgrounds, abilities, and needs. Thankfully, it's organized in a way that makes it easy to use and understand. And much like the observations we enter in gold, the indicators they provide are observable skills and behaviors. Go ahead and open your copy of the ELOF to page 7. You should see this chart. It shows the 5 central domains at the top, and on the left there is a column for infant-toddler domains and preschooler domains. The 2 major differences between them is the additional subdomains within language and literacy and cognition. This is because once children are 3 years old, they generally start to show evidence of beginning literacy, mathematics development, and scientific reasoning skills. Learning in each of the domains are crucial to long-term success. Each domain is organized by subdomains, then goals, developmental progressions, and indicators. The developmental progression and indicators can be confusing because it seems like both sections are saying the same thing, and they kind of are. But keep in mind, the focus of the framework is on outcomes. So the indicators given describe the outcomes our students should accomplish by the time they leave our program. The developmental progression helps us to see if they are on target based on their age range by giving brief descriptions of what we can expect to see. Next, we will watch a short video from eClick, which shows how you can use the ELOF in your work with children and families.
Children. We all love them. We're totally invested in their futures as lifelong learners and happy, healthy human beings. But managing everyday events and planning for their very distant futures can be a challenge. That's why there's the ELOF. That's right. It's the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework. The ELOF is an easy-to-use guide that will help you identify developmental milestones to make sure the kids in your care are ready for kindergarten and everything after that. The ELOF focuses on age-appropriate expectations for birth to 5-year-olds, so you can plan experiences and activities that match a child's skills and abilities at any stage. It is a resource to be used with all children, including dual language learners or children with special needs. And it can be used in all settings, such as home-based, center-based, and family child care. Need to build language skills for a babbling baby? There's the ELOF for that. Baffled by the behavior of a testy toddler? There's the ELOF for that. Want to scaffold learning for a precocious preschooler? Yes, there's even the ELOF for that. The ELOF helps teachers, home visitors, and family child care providers identify the steps in a child's development, so you know where he's headed next. We know the challenges and pressures that come with supporting a child's development. Let us help enhance your practice and provide a path towards a child's success in school and life. With the ELOF, we're planning with the big picture in mind. Plan with us, and remember, there's the ELOF for that.
That video made a pretty big claim. We're always trying to find ways to address challenging behavior and minimize it as much as possible. And yes, the ELOF can help, and you will learn how, but that is not until a little bit later on. For now, let's learn the basics. We're going to dive into each of the ELOF domains. First, let's look at the framework for effective practice. This shows all the components that work together to meet the Head Start approach to school readiness, which is children are ready for school, families are ready to support their children's learning, and schools are ready for children. It begins with a foundation of nurturing, responsive, and effective interactions in engaging environments. In the center of the framework is parent and family engagement. To the left is the first pillar, implementing research-based curriculum and teaching practices. The second pillar represents screenings and ongoing assessments of children's needs, and it is all topped off with highly individualized teaching and learning. So which one of these do you think the ELOF supports? If you identified that as a trick question, you were right. Each of the parts of the framework for effective practice is addressed when using the ELOF to fidelity. If you haven't already, please open your copy of the ELOF and turn to page 3. You can follow along as we go through some highlights, and I will let you know when we need to move on to a new page. This page outlines the guiding principles which form the foundation of the ELOF. The first guiding principle is each child is unique and can succeed. I'll give you a second to read that. Okay, so in a nutshell, this paragraph is telling us that each child's context matters. The more we know, the better equipped we are to provide appropriate supports for them to be successful learners. For example, if you know a child has insecure attachment or has been moved between homes numerous times, you may more clearly understand how changes in routine may be triggering for them. You may tell them it is time to transition between activities before you signal the rest of the class. You may also make sure someone is available nearby during the transition to help guide them as necessary. This type of individualization will help them to feel secure in the classroom, allowing them to be successful learners. Learning occurs within the context of relationships. Go ahead and read this description. This principle recognizes that learning happens best when children have positive relationships with adults in their lives. Many of you have had experiences where you were grouped with people you did not know and were expected to do something, such as in a project in school or a role play in a training. How did you feel? Did you contribute fully, or were you a bit reserved? How would it have been different if you were with your friends or favorite coworkers? When we apply our experiences to what we are expecting of children, it quickly becomes clear how important it is to develop a relationship with each child and facilitate positive peer relationships. Hey everyone. So I want to talk to you face to face for a minute because I want to discuss something that I learned about being a responsive teacher. And it is along the lines of trauma. And I had an experience at a conference that was just so overwhelmingly powerful, right? And I've wanted to share it with you for a long time, but it's tricky because I know that we all, as an organization, have pretty high ACEs, and things can be triggering. And for that reason, I'm not going to give you the experience that I had, but I am going to tell you about it. And I'm warning you now because it might still trigger you just hearing about it. So it's going to be in regards to a child who witnessed domestic violence. So if you want to step out of the room and not listen to this experience that I had, then please do so. Take care of yourself. That's most important. But the reason I feel it's so important to share with you is because it was really eye-opening. because it gave me a first-hand experience of what our kids are going through. Essentially, what this instructor did, it was about trauma, right? Being trauma-informed in our teaching practices. And she played for us. It was a huge, huge room. Like, imagine the all of the rooms at the ESD being, opened up for our major training. Actually, yeah, that's about right. And it was filled with people. And she started playing this 911 call from a little girl who's preschool aged. And it was a 9-minute call. So we sat there for 9 minutes and listened while she called 911 to report that her mommy and daddy were fighting. And throughout the call, she was going through different levels of emotion. She would get really, really scared, and then she would yell at her parents, "Stop, you're hurting mommy." She had a little baby brother who was newborn, and at one point the parents started fighting over this baby, and she's like, hurry, they're gonna hurt my brother. Stop, you're gonna hurt my brother. And even now I get goosebumps thinking about it. It was rough. It took all I could muster to stay in that room and listen. And it was so hard. It's so hard to hear a child in that kind of pain. And then the recording ended, and in that huge room filled with people, there was not a sound to be heard. Nobody was talking. Nobody was moving. Everybody was just sort of frozen. And the facilitator then started walking around the room going, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Hey, Johnny, why aren't you clapping? You know it's circle time. We should be clapping right now. Come on, join us. Don't just sit there." And that turned on the light bulb, right? Our children have many times traumas that we don't ever know about, and we won't know about. But what we do know is how they respond in different situations. And so seeing a child in circle time that is just zoning out, that is, they're capable, that they know what's going on and they know how to engage, but they're not doing it. So you think they're choosing not to do it. It might be something that you know nothing about what's happening behind the scenes in that child's context. And so just being aware that trauma doesn't always manifest in kids who scream and yell and hit you and throw things. Sometimes it's the kiddo who just doesn't engage. It's the kiddo that just sits there, and it's because they can't. I tell you, as soon as that training was over, it was time for lunch. And I was at a conference in Austin, Texas, and I met up with the other coaches here, and we were trying to decide where to go for lunch. Now, before I met up with them, I went to the bathroom, and I cried. And I really, really, really wanted to call my children and tell them I loved them, and just to hear their voices. I mean, my heart, it was just hurting, But I knew if I called them in the state that I was in, it would cause them grief and worry, because I'm in a whole other state, and what are they going to do about it? And they're kids, right? I mean, they were adults, most of them, but still, that's rough. And so anyway, got myself together, got all composed, joined the other two coaches. Hey, what do you want to do for lunch? I couldn't think. I could not answer that question. What do you feel like eating? I have no idea. Do you want to stay here, or do you want to go out across the way? Couldn't tell you. I couldn't answer anything. And that lasted for a couple hours, 2-3 hours at least, maybe most of the rest of the day. I was unable to make the most basic executive function things, right? Like I couldn't use my executive function. That's what I'm trying to say. because that was traumatizing. It was rough. And that was just me witnessing someone else's trauma. I wasn't in that trauma. And I'm a grown adult, right? I have skills, I have coping strategies, I have support systems, I have all kinds of things that I can use to cope. But our kiddos, they're 3 years old, they don't have those skills yet. Not only do they not have those skills, they don't even know how to say, oh my gosh, I am being so affected by this thing, right? So I just wanted to talk to you about that for a minute, because I want you to keep that in the back of your mind when you're responding to children's behaviors. Being a responsive teacher means reflecting. It means thinking outside of what you see and what you know to recognize what you don't see, what you don't know, and responding from that angle. Okay, thank you for bearing with me in that story. I know it was tough. Hopefully not as tough for you as it was for me. Even retelling it, tough. But that's why we're here, right? We're here for our kids, and we can make a difference. And when we respond in the right ways, and when we equip them with the skills that we have and that we can give them, we're helping and we're making a difference, and it's a difference that's going to last their lifetime. So thank you. Thank you for being the person that's willing to do that. Thank you for caring about them. Thank you for coming in day after day, even when you know it's going to be hard sometimes, even when you know you don't have the answer sometimes. Thank you. You guys are rock stars. So I forgot to mention in that video that the little girl did get help. The police arrived, intervened, and her baby brother was unharmed. Now, I recognize that this still could have been difficult to process, and so we are going to take a quick brain break. I'm going to play some nice and lovely imagery and some sounds for you to relax, reflect, and then we'll dive back into more guiding principles. right, continuing on to more guiding principles. Our children's families are diverse in so many ways, but one thing remains the same. They are the experts on their children. They have been teaching their child since the day they were born and will continue to do so for years to come. It is important we recognize this so we can support them to decrease barriers and increase strengths as they help their children to be ready for school and beyond. Building a relationship with families creates a context in which we can learn more about the individual child, and families can learn how to focus their support for their child's growth and development. When we collaborate in this way, child outcomes soar. Children learn best when they are emotionally and physically safe and secure. Please read the description. This principle sounds a bit like the one we previously discussed about learning in the context of supportive and nurturing relationships. In fact, it does include that, but it also incorporates the entire environment around the child, such as peer interactions and routines. Have you ever seen a classroom where one child was very dysregulated, screaming, running, or throwing things? When this is a common occurrence in the classroom, a warm relationship with the teacher is not enough to help the other children in the class to feel emotionally and physically safe and secure. This is one of the reasons why children should be taken outside when something is happening to create an unsafe environment. But there are ways that we can create an emotionally and physically safe environment so children do not become dysregulated in the first place. This is what the first-tier PBIS strategies are all about. For example, providing consistency of routines so children know what to expect. Visual schedules are another great tool to offer a sense of safety because they help children to remember the classroom routine and can easily access them at any time. Areas of development are integrated and children learn many concepts and skills at the same time. Please read the paragraph. When I began my career with Head Start, I would always get offended by K-12 teachers who said we weren't really teaching because all we did was play all day. Then I learned to recognize that as a compliment. If it looks like all we're doing is playing, then we are doing our jobs right. The reason for this is that developmentally appropriate learning at this age is through play. And just like this principle indicates, multiple areas of development are integrated and learned at the same time. Looking at this picture, what areas of development do you recognize? Fine motor skills, peer interactions, following limits and expectations, attending and engaging? What math skills are they learning? What about science? If we could hear the conversation happening, they may also be learning some great language skills. When we keep this principle in mind, we make the most of every activity. Our kids will have a great experience, and it will seem like all we are doing all day is playing. This principle states that teaching must be intentional and focused on how children learn and grow. As you read this description, notice the mention of developmentally appropriate practice. The ELOF provides information about what children should be able to do at different ages and what to expect next. This helps us to create learning opportunities that are appropriate for their developmental stage. For example, if we're planning an activity to increase counting and cardinality skills, we may ask a young child playing in blocks which pile of same size blocks has more or less blocks. Then we may ask an older child the same question, but using two different sets of blocks mixed together that have different sizes. It makes it a little more complicated for their developmental stage. Let's talk a bit more about developmentally appropriate practice. According to Head Start, Developmentally appropriate practice is individualized, responsive care that is just right for the child's age, cultural context, and personality. So a few years ago, I had a 16-year-old and a 4-year-old who both wanted to drive. Would it be okay to let them each take turns behind the wheel? Of course not. We can all agree that my little one was not developmentally ready to learn to drive. But this isn't the end of the story. I found a way to provide a more appropriate way to meet his interests with a Power Wheels vehicle designed for 3 to 6-year-olds. Both children's needs and interests were met in a developmentally appropriate way. Looking at Head Start's definition of developmentally appropriate practice, how did I do? NIAC's definition of developmentally appropriate practice is methods that promote each child's optimal development and learning through a strength-based, play-based approach to joyful, engaged learning. Now, it might be a little bit different than the Head Start's definition, but it really just enhances it and helps us to dig a bit deeper and make it easier to apply to our work in the classroom. Sometimes in our desire to ensure our students are ready to be successful in school, we may be tempted to provide activities that do not meet the definition of strength-based, play-based, joyful, engaged learning. Examples include worksheets, flashcards, and any sort of rote memorization, such as memorizing a song to perform as a class. When you find yourself heading down this path, there's an easy solution. Ask yourself, what skill am I wanting them to learn, and what do they already know? Then you can identify next steps with fun, engaging activities that incorporate these skills naturally. If you have difficulty coming up with an alternative, make use of your resources. Look in Creative Curriculum's intentional teaching cards, Mighty Minutes, and foundation books. Brainstorm with your teaching team, collaborate with your coach, or ask your center director. Remember, the children may be expected to do worksheets and write all the letters in the alphabet next year, but that's next year. So much development happens in a year's time at this young age. This guiding principle states that every child has diverse strengths rooted in their family's culture, background, language, and beliefs. Please read the paragraph. How do we welcome and respond to the unique backgrounds and prior experiences of each child? The first step is knowing each child's strengths, experiences, and values. Take time to build a relationship with the child and their family. Collaborate, ask questions. Many of the forms provided for home visits are designed to help you gain that knowledge and build relationships, such as getting to know your child, family mapping, and family strengths and goal planning. Then use that knowledge to inform the classroom environment and your teaching practices. For example, imagine a family whose favorite hobby is playing rock band together on the PlayStation. Their child would probably enjoy finding a performing stage in dramatic play or a guitar with the musical instruments. They might also respond well to teaching practices which incorporate singing and music. On page 4, you will see a section which talks about dual language learners. It's a little bit more lengthy than what we've been looking at, so I'll give you a couple minutes to read it. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to finish that. I know it can sometimes feel daunting to support dual language learners when we do not speak their home language, but we must support their learning in both languages. This will help with their development in all areas of learning, and it is honoring them to respond to and support this part of their identity. Some methods to encourage learning in their home language you may already be familiar with, such as labeling the classroom, reading books, and singing songs in their home language. But you can also invite family members to volunteer in the classroom, and don't limit participation to their guardians. Extend an invitation to grandparents, aunts, uncles, and adult siblings. Sometimes these relatives may find it easier to come during the day than parents who are routinely scheduled to work during school hours. Remember, speaking English is not a prerequisite for volunteers. They can play with children during free choice, read a book to the class, whatever they feel comfortable doing. Dual language community volunteers are also a great resource. Also, encourage discussion in the classroom about words in different languages. Don't be afraid to ask the children or their families how to pronounce some words that relate to current concepts being taught. What are some other ways you can think of to encourage children to demonstrate their skills and knowledge in both languages? Okay, let's skip forward to page 10 in the ELOF that discusses approaches to learning. This is essentially how children learn. For example, being able to self-regulate their emotions and behaviors in different situations, using their working memory skills and cognitive self-regulation skills. We commonly refer to cognitive self-regulation as executive function. There are 13 goals associated with approaches to learning categorized within 4 subdomains. Page 12 is the first page of goals for infants and toddlers. The first page for preschool children is on page 16, and it continues through page 21. Take a minute to look through them. Okay, do they sound familiar? They should. These same goals can be found in gold. They are organized a bit differently because approaches to learning is not a single category like in the ELOF. Instead, it is incorporated into the social, emotional, language, and cognitive domains. The corresponding goals are indicated here with stars. I recognize this graphic may be difficult to read. There, is that better? We do not expect you to memorize all of this or even write it down. It's a lot, and you'll be provided with an ELOF Gold crosswalk to make your life easier. This is just to give you an idea of how the two tools work together. Let's apply what we have learned from this section to the snapshot of this kiddo. What approaches to learning is he exhibiting? Is he managing his feelings? Following limits and expectations? Forming a relationship with adults? Persisting? This is a good example of the guiding principle that many areas of development can be learned in one activity. When you document an observation such as this, make sure to assess all the relevant areas of development. And remember, you can select up to 10 dimensions to assess in a single observation in gold. What about this child? He appears to be a bit younger, but we can still determine what appropriate expectations are for his age. Look at the developmental progression for 3-year-olds under the different subdomains and approaches to learning. Can you identify a common thread that runs through them all? So you may have noticed they all contain the phrase "with adult support." This helps us to recognize that he needs an adult supporting him when he engages in activities that may be challenging or frustrating. Therefore, it would not be developmentally appropriate to expect him to play Jenga with a peer without a lot of adult support. Even then, it would be more appropriate to use larger blocks that will match his fine motor abilities as well. I'm not going to go into depth with all the domains like I did with approaches to learning, because I think you probably understand the basic framework now. And since you'll be using the ELOF to help guide your work, we know you will soon become an expert. So instead, I want to point out some helpful information you can find in each section, in addition to the framework. Look at pages 22 and 23. This is the introduction to social and emotional development. And every one of the domains has an introductory section like this, and that they provide additional information and things to consider. So for example, the last paragraph on page 23 discusses considering a child's cultural and linguistic background as well as differing abilities. You can use these suggestions to further inform your intentional teaching practices as you implement activities. I've quoted it here on the screen for you to see. More ideas can be found throughout the framework. For example, the information pictured here can be found at the bottom of page 30. It states that developmental delays can impact children's social and emotional development, including the ability to engage in reciprocal interactions and regulate their emotions. Adults can use puppets to help children engage in back and forth interactions to teach them how to demonstrate different emotions. I recognize that many people have strong feelings about puppets, but they are a magical tool available for a myriad of situations. If you want to strengthen your puppetry skills, let your coach know. They will be happy to help. Okay, so the rest of the domains that we would find in the ELOF are language and communication, literacy, and mathematics development, scientific reasoning, and perceptual, motor, and physical development. When you have a chance, please go through each one of these domains and get familiar with all of the different developmental progressions and indicators for each of the goals. Sometimes it can be difficult getting used to something that you haven't used a whole lot of in the past. And if you're anything like me, you probably use the GOLD objectives and dimensions and are really familiar with them. But the ELOF is a little bit more foreign. So for that reason, we're going to provide you with a crosswalk that looks something like this so that you can easily find what you're looking for in the ELOF if your starting point and your comfort level is GOLD. For those of you who like digital tools rather than books, there is the ELOF to go. You should find this app on your iPad. When you open it up, you will see a choice between 3 different age groupings. These correspond to the developmental progression and kindergarten readiness indicators we just learned about. For this example, I selected 36 through 48 months, and it immediately brought me to the first goal within emotional and behavioral self-regulation. If you look on page 16 of the ELOF, you will see this is the first subdomain in approaches to learning, and manages emotion is the first goal. However, I'm more interested in manages actions, words, and behaviors, which is goal 4. So I click on that tab. This shows me the developmental progression just as it is stated on page 17, but I want to know more. You see, I have a student that keeps throwing blocks at her peers, and I want to know how to support her to manage her feelings and actions in a safer way. So I click on Teaching Practice at the bottom. It shows 3 different tabs: Interactions, Environment, and Individualization. After reading Interactions, I see it may be helpful to reinforce positive behavior through simple, positively worded rules. In the Environment tab, I am reminded to use visual clues to help children remember expectations. It also gave me a new idea to put some props in dramatic play that are specifically geared toward coping with strong feelings. In the Individualization tab, there are two strategies I can consider using. I just used the ELOF to demonstrate a way to find help for a challenging behavior. But remember, when we follow the ELOF to fidelity and use the other tools given to us through PBIS, right response, and conscious discipline, we build a strong foundation for effective practices. The ELOF to Go helps us make sure we really understand the concepts of the teaching practices by providing a story and activity. When you click on that tab at the bottom, instructions pop up to let you know what to look for as you read a quick story. Once you click on the OK, then a one-paragraph story is revealed. When you finish reading it, you can click on the Activity Question tab at the bottom, and this will bring up a review question. You can select all that apply and then click Submit Your Answer. If your answer is correct, it will tell you congratulations. Otherwise, it will let you try again until you select all the appropriate answers. Pretty cool, right? We encourage you to get familiar with both the print version of the ELOF and the digital app. Then you'll be equipped for success. Now we're about to dive into some policies, procedures, and whatnot, so we're going to take a quick brain break. Hopefully you enjoyed that little brain break. Now we're going to dive into our guiding standards to get a clear idea of why we must use the ELOF and how it corresponds to our program philosophy. Here's a list of our policies and procedures that you may find relevant to today's training. We will not go through them today, but please check them out on our program website, especially because these policies and procedures do get updated generally each year, so it's always a good idea to look at them again at the start of the new year. The link at the bottom of the slide will take you to it. I'll give you a minute to copy down the address if you want. Earlier, we talked about the definition of developmentally appropriate practice. Let's review that again before we continue. By combining the Head Start and NIAC definitions, we come up with individualized responsive care that is just right for the child's age, cultural context, and personality, and that promotes each child's optimal development and learning through a strength-based, play-based approach to joyful, engaged learning. The Head Start performance standards outline everything we must do in our program. They know that when we adhere to these standards, we are providing high-quality preschool education that ensures children are ready for school, families are ready to support their children's learning, and schools are ready for children. You can find a copy of the Head Start performance standards in your center. We'll go over a couple of pieces out of the curriculum section to equip you with the why behind using the ELOF and developmentally appropriate practices. This section begins with the purpose. A program must deliver developmentally, culturally, and linguistically appropriate learning experiences in language, literacy, mathematics, social and emotional functioning, approaches to learning, science, physical skills, and creative arts. I highlighted the phrase that directly corresponds to what we have learned today. You will see that in the upcoming slides as well. As we go through these, I'm simply going to read them to you. This way I know everyone is able to absorb the information, whether you're an auditory learner or a visual learner. And if you're a kinesthetic learner, I hope you are doodling or fidgeting with something as you listen. And don't worry, these performance standards are always available to you. If you cannot find a copy, please ask your center director. This standard is regarding teaching and the learning environment. Focus on promoting growth in the developmental progressions described in the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework ages birth to 5 by aligning with and using the framework and the curricula as described in section 1302.32. To direct planning of organized activities, schedules, lesson plans, and the implementation of high-quality early learning experiences that are responsive to and build upon each child's individual pattern of development and learning. Include developmentally appropriate learning experiences in language, literacy, social and emotional development, math, science, social studies, creative arts, and physical development that are focused toward achieving progress outlined in the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework ages birth to 5. Learning environment. A program must ensure teachers implement well-organized learning environments with developmentally appropriate schedules, lesson plans, and indoor and outdoor learning experiences that provide adequate opportunities for choice, play, exploration, and experimentation among a variety of learning, sensory, and motor experiences. And for preschool-age children, include teacher-directed and child-initiated activities, active and quiet learning activities, and opportunities for individual, small group, and large group learning activities. I want to draw your attention back to that last sentence. Notice the types of activities we must provide: teacher-directed, child-initiated, active learning, quiet learning, individual, small group, and large group learning activities. Make sure your lesson plans and daily schedule support this standard. Curricula. Center-based and family child care programs must implement developmentally appropriate research-based early childhood curricula, including additional curricular enhancements as appropriate that are based on scientifically valid research and have standardized training procedures and curriculum materials to support implementation, are aligned with the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework ages birth to 5, and as appropriate, state early learning and development standards, and are sufficiently content-rich to promote measurable progress toward development and learning outlined in the framework, and have an organized developmental scope and sequence that include plans and materials for learning experiences based on developmental progressions and how children learn. Child screenings and assessments. Assessment for individualization. A program must conduct standardized and structured assessments, which may be observation-based or direct, for each child that provide ongoing information to evaluate the child's developmental level and progress and outcomes aligned to the goals described in the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework ages birth to 5. Whew, we made it through all of those standards. Thank you for sticking with it. Before we go, let's make sure we provided answers to all the questions that we started at the beginning. Okay, can you use the ELOF to plan teaching strategies? Well, let's say a child's goal is to learn how to count. That is a pretty common one. By looking at the ELOF for the goal on page 57, child understands the relationship between numbers and quantities. We see that putting items in a line and using one-on-one correspondence is a good strategy. So, when you see that a child is playing zoo with animals, you may inquire how many animals are in the zoo and then help them count by first arranging the animals in a line and then pointing to each one as you say the number with the child. How can you use the ELOF to inform learning environments? Generally, the progressions and indicators mention items as part of the description. For example, in this progression on page 63, child compares and categorizes observable phenomena. We see a child should be able to sort objects based on more complex attributes such as weight, sound, or texture. What could you put in the learning environment to prompt this type of sorting? Perhaps during your clothing study, you may create an interest area featuring clothing with a variety of textures and baskets to sort them into. Or, if you're currently doing a music study, you could provide a variety of instruments that make a different type of sound, such as a variety of drums, shaker eggs, and bells. Also, think back to the picture we just saw on the previous slide. Did you notice the blue tape on the ground? This is another way of setting up the environment according to the ELOF. The blue tape supported her to put the animals in a line, which then can be counted. Can the ELOF really help you to write your lesson plan? For sure. Let's say you need to add a literacy activity for the week. So you pop open the ELOF to the literacy section, and this goal on page 49 jumps out at you. Child writes for a variety of purposes using increasingly sophisticated marks. Then you see the progression and indicators that encompass all of the children in your class, and they vary from an activity that consists largely of drawing and scribbling all the way to writing their first name correctly. What activity could you plan that will support everyone, regardless of their developmental level? Aha! A play plan. This is an activity that provides a purpose to their drawing and writing, which also gives them the freedom to express themselves as they are able. For selecting professional development goals, I chose approaches to learning because supporting how children learn can often be more challenging than helping them to develop a specific skill. Goal 13 on page 21 is child uses imagination in play and interactions with others. And you have a couple of students who are just not interested in anything except putting together puzzles by themselves. They also do not respond when you talk to them. You believe this is because they are just learning English and either do not understand you or lack the words to respond, so they just don't. Finding yourself at a loss for how to support them in this goal, you decide to make it a goal with your coach. You might also suggest to your CD that you would like your professional goal to be centered around supporting dual language learners, which could lead to a specific training, research, or book study to support you in that goal. It's question and answer time. We have 5 minutes during this live session to answer any questions that you have. If we do not get to them, please add them to the parking lot and we will get back to you. Thank you for engaging in this training with us.